Here in the Mojave Desert, animals have had millions of years to adapt to the harsh environment. But the lizard? He's going to die.
The desert, a dangerous and fantastical place understandably inspiring the filmmakers of Rango. But despite the grueling heat, vicious predators and lack of water, the desert is full of life. As many different kinds of desert as there are, there's different kinds of animals. My name's Donald Schultz, and with the help of experts and the filmmakers of Rango, I'm going to introduce you to as many of the animals as possible. Come on, there's no time to lose.
Or I could be the rogue anthropologist battling pythons down in the Congo.
There's something spiritual about the desert. I've always felt that way, walking through the desert.
There's a kind of beauty to this, a very dry place.
You first approach it and it seems like it's just death. I mean, it seems like there's nothing living. You know, you slowly adjust and you start to perceive all sorts of life.
Well, we knew that we were referencing certain animals from the desert because we really had to populate this world, and I think they have personalities built into them that we kind of enhanced.
What are you, old goping axe?
We're blurring that line between reality and fantasy.
So have a look at this guy. This is a 9-banded armadillo, or Dasypus novum cinctus, and that's all about the business on its back, which is this heavily armored area. And against predators and heat, sometimes the best offense is a good defense, and that's exactly what this guy has. He has a hard shell on the outside over here, and the name 9-banded armadillo is not exactly correct. Now, they can have anywhere from 8 to 11 bands on their back, but 8 to 11 banded armadillo just isn't as catchy. The only soft parts in an armadillo is its underbelly over there. Some armadillos will burrow into the ground for defense, some of them will roll up into a ball, and some of them will just hide. They run around and defend themselves and hunt with these incredibly sharp claws. And what they'll do is they'll dig up things like snakes and lizards to eat. Most of the time they're eating things like bugs and insects. Speaking of insects, I'm going to go and try and find out some dangerous and deadly bugs.
I will see you on the other side.
So I found it's a pretty dangerous animal, but they're very misunderstood and feared by humans. Out of over 1,000 species, there's only 25 that can kill human beings. We cool? Check this out. It's a little desert scorpion. Oh, look at that. And basically, if you look at this guy, he has those pinchers on the front, tail on the back that he uses to introduce venom, kill the animal, and then eat them. A general rule of thumb with scorpions is the bigger the tail and the smaller the pinchers, the more toxic the scorpion is. But if you don't know what you're doing with scorpions, you should always leave them alone. Scorpions like this have been on the earth for about 400 million years and running around with very little change to them. And even though this guy looks pretty scary, he's not really that bad. I'm gonna let him chill out over here, because they like coming out at night. Make his little house around him.
When you're talking about deserts, there is a lot of cool stuff to find, but a lot of it is doing the same stuff we would try to do if we were living out in the desert, which is hide ourselves from the middle of the day heat of the sun. You start to dig in the ground or look under rocks, you get all sorts of cool spiders and scorpions and centipedes. There's all sorts of other wild insects flying around, not to mention a lot of the cool reptiles and amphibians that live out there as well.
Reptiles, gotta stick together, right, my brother?
I'm an amphibian.
Ain't no shame in that.
Okay, quick pop quiz. Both of these are called toads, but one of them's a lizard and the other one's an amphibian. Any ideas? This is a horned toad or horned lizard, and this is just a toad. Now, you wouldn't think you'd find an amphibian in the desert, but these guys are really, really smart. They only come out when it's rainy or wet. When it's hot like this, they'll burrow under the ground. Now, the horned lizard or horned toad gets its name because it has that pudgy appearance, the rounded nose, and if you look at its body shape, it's almost identical to a toad, but it's not a toad at all. It's in fact a lizard. And what these guys do is when they're scared, they'll make themselves almost twice the size and blow themselves up. And if you look, those spikes in the back of his neck, even though they look really toxic and dangerous, are actually not that bad at all.
The horned toad lizard, many people call them the horny toad lizard, they are able to restrict blood flow into the eye, so eventually the eye bursts and blood shoots straight into its attacker with uncanny accuracy.
What exactly are we gonna do now?
Snake, come look here. Oh, but just be careful. I was hoping we'd see one of these guys. This is the most toxic snake in North America. Have a listen to that rattle. He's got that rattlesnake defense, but as soon as you stop moving, he starts rattling. And the reason is he's got these incredible heat-sensing pits on either side of his face, and he can see my heat signature. So as soon as I do that, he's smelling, he's seeing, he's sensing everything that's going on. Rattlesnake Jake is a sharpshooter in the movie, and that's very accurate because rattlesnakes strike so fast, it's faster than the human eye. They can complete the entire strike in 1/24 of a second. Let me show you this guy. Look at that. And these are sometimes called diamondback rattlesnakes or southern Pacific rattlesnakes. And you can see what he's doing is he's telling me to leave him alone. He's saying, get out of here or you're going to get bitten. And with rattlesnakes, they're that's toxic. They have venom, but it's not limitless. They can't just waste it on anything. So he's going to try and make me get away from him. And the last thing he'll do is strike. And that strike is easily enough to kill an adult human being. People who get bitten by these snakes sometimes stop breathing, have to go on ventilators and die. So if you look here, have a look at this. What makes vipers and adders so unique is the fact that they have these long fangs that they can hinge forward. And they basically move them and they attach to elastic cartilage and flick them forward. What this allows is their fangs to go deep into the tissue of the animals that are trying to kill them or they're trying to eat. And this allows the venom to go a lot deeper, act a lot quicker, and they actually have to use less venom. So while this is the most toxic snake in North America, I want to introduce you to his little cousin, which is the smallest rattlesnake in the world. Cheers, little buddy. They're called sidewinders, and you can see why they get that name because of this crazy locomotion strategy that they have, and that's to have as little of their body on the ground as possible because of the blazing heat. They're also called horned rattlesnakes, and the reason for that, let me show you. If you look on top of his little eyes, he's got those perfect little horns, which makes him look like a little devil. The tail is basically made out of keratin, which is the same thing that's in your fingernails, and each time the snake sheds its skin, it gets another little nodule on the end, and you can see there, he shed his skin a lot. These guys are almost white in coloration because they want to reflect as much heat and light as possible. Like most desert animals, rattlesnakes in the desert don't get extremely big because there's not a lot of food, there's not a lot of water, and there's not a lot of things to go around and eat. So these guys are basically staying a lot smaller than their cousins that live in rainforests and other areas. So I'm going to let this little guy go. And while I do, the filmmakers of Rango are going to tell you some of the inspirations for the characters in the film.
Gore had always had the idea of Rattlesnake Jake being kind of like the Grim Reaper. So it's just an inherently kind of tough creature. I think that's another aspect of desert animals is that they endure so much strife living in the desert trying to survive that they've got to have some sort of defense mechanism or tough exterior. And I think we took that tough exterior and built it into them more so character-wise than aesthetically.
You want to look at the reference material, what the animal looks like, what the animal characteristics in terms of movement and facial expression. But what is the most interesting element, detail of a porcupine is his spike, right? So the combination of the spikes, his outfit and his expression, unless I tell you it's a porcupine, you won't know. It's a completely different thing that hadn't been seen before. You kind of invent, as you go along, you invent every single thing.
Now I know what you're thinking. You're saying, Donald, why are you so close to that porcupine? Are you incredibly brave or incredibly stupid? The truth of it is, porcupines don't actually shoot their quills. What their quills are just hardened hairs that cover their entire body. Underneath their body, they just have hairs for warmth and heat. When young porcupines or porcupets are born, all the hair is soft, but literally within hours, their hair hardens up to make an incredible defense. What they'll do when you encounter them in the wild is they'll actually take their tail when they get startled, wiggle it from side to side and get those quills into your flesh, which is incredibly painful. And most people will run away, but I won't because I'm incredibly brave. And because I'm so brave, I'm going to let someone else explain the next animal to you.
There is probably no greater fear than that of spiders, at least as with the animals I work with. When you're talking about desert environments, of course, the topic always comes up about tarantulas being out in the desert. The biggest misconception about how nasty tarantulas are is that they're really not nasty at all. So of the 2,000 or so worldwide, there's actually only one that is considered potentially dangerous to people at all. One of the good things about tarantulas is that they're really hard to get up close and personal with because they're living in burrows or they're hiding out in crevices and they don't really want anything to do with a real dangerous animal like you and me. We often think of it erroneously as the other way around, that these spiders are out there to get us. But any fight between you and the next tarantula you see, I'm betting on you every time because one big shoe will do it. In order for a tarantula to even bite you, it actually has to rear up and strike downwards this way when it wants to bite. It actually brings its fangs, which are held back in this way, and has to bring its fangs out like this to actually get a bite to occur in the first place.